didn't make that many lines, so if everybody can just write small and fill in the blanks and please print.
Don't sign it?
Yes.
Especially when you turn it over.
Jim Lampman. Nate Dodson.
Yes.
Tim McQueen.
Yes.
Greg Robertson.
Yes.
Tanya Dryland. Gavin McClintock. Randy Dingenbaugh.
Yes.
Tom Tinas, yes.
With that, remind everybody of the meetings act is posted on the south wall. And, you're ready to go, and we have a recording device, so just to let everybody know that this meeting's being recorded. The first thing we need to do is approve the agenda for August 11th. Has everybody had time to look at it? I have a motion to approve the agenda for the August 11th meeting and a second. Do you have any discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and vote.
Okay, Nate.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Tanya.
Yes.
Gavin. Yes. Randy.
Yes.
And myself, yes.
All right, we have minutes from July 14th. That we need to approve, and we do have enough to do that, so I would entertain a motion Tim, was your motion to waive the reading of the minutes? Okay, great. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for July 14th, 2025, and waive the reading, and we'll vote.
Brandon. Donnie.
Yes.
Greg.
Yes.
Tim. Yes.
It stands. We only have 5. Now we're going back to May 12th. Minutes. 2025. Has everybody found the minutes in your packet? I have a motion to approve minutes for May 12th, 2025.
Move to approve the minutes.
Me, made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great, second. And Keith, was you were waiving the reading?
Yes.
We have a motion and a second to approve minutes for May 12th, 2025, and waive the reading. With that, we'll vote.
Tom Tigas, yes. Randy.
Yes.
Donnie. Gavin. Donnie.
Yes.
Greg. Tim. Nate.
Yes.
Jim Lamb was absent, and Sharon Alcoa absent.
With that, we've approved minutes for May 12th, 2025. Now we're on to December 23rd, 2024.
Yes.
Alright, so those are tabled. And then- Welcome. You've been shaking time, that's pretty good. Alright, put in Shannon entered the meeting at 7:09. Where we got 4 and 5, so can you? Okay, so they're still, we'll still go on and table those minutes. Alright, we have a conditional use permit. We'll get some information. Yes.
Hello, I am Taylor Provo. I am Planning and Zoning Administrator for Perkins County. Tonight I will be presenting a statement of fact for both requests on the agenda. So we'll just get started with that. So request by Midwest Electric Corporation for a conditional use permit 02-2025 for a commercial solar conversion system located in the east half of the southwest quarter of 231035 Perkins County, Nebraska. Robert Cummings is the property owner of the lot subject to this conditional use permit request. The property is zoned general agriculture. The regulations read Article 6 Supplemental District Regulations, Section 61409, Commercial Solar Conversion Systems. 1. The purpose of this subsection is to provide standards for CSCS consisting of ground-mounted solar panels, whether fixed or movable, capturing energy from the sun and converting it to electricity. The provisions of this section are based on a ground-mounted photovoltaic facility using a rammed post construction technique and panels supporting the flow of rainwater between each module and the growth of vegetation beneath the arrays and limiting the impact of stormwater runoff. The rammed post construction technique allows for minimal disturbance to the existing ground and grading of the site based on the assumed solar farm design. Perkins County finds the use to be low intensity with minimal trip generation, low amounts of impervious cover, and low emission, thus the use of compatible in urbanized, non-urbanized, or low density areas with other uses. 2. Conditional use permit. A CSCS shall require a conditional use permit. The applicant shall complete and submit the conditional use permit application forms specified by the county and shall submit among other required materials specified in the application form. A detailed plot plan drawn to scale showing the layout and all main components of proposed CSCS. The application for a conditional use permit shall also show property lines, existing structures, features on the lot, proposed locations of solar panel arrays with respect to property lines and dimensions of the proposed arrays of solar panels, as well as any other required details. Uses and approximate location of structures on adjoining lots shall be shown and identified. The property owned by Robert Cummings. Property owner has provided written consent for the request and proposed use. Solar lease agreement is in place. The parcel is 79.6 acres. There are no current structures on the parcel. Signed application with appropriate fees was received. The proposed facility is not within a floodplain. 84 property owners within 3 miles have been notified of the requested conditional use permit. The comprehensive plan notes under future land use plan on page 85, under land use component, concepts for agricultural use, in order to abide by the principles in general land use planning The future land uses in incorporated areas of Perkins County should continue to be dominated by agricultural production, including crop production, pasture land, hay production, livestock production, and related incompatible agricultural uses and agribusiness uses. The installer will adhere to the highest standards in environmental responsibility throughout the construction, operation, and maintenance of the proposed system. Applicant is requesting a waiver on the height requirement. Regulations state 61410 site development standards for CSCS 3 height. The use of tracking systems to adjust the angle of a solar panel shall be allowed. The average maximum height of the solar panel array shall not exceed 15 feet. The total height of solar arrays proposed is 34 feet 4 inches. Applicant is requesting a waiver on 61409 commercial solar conversion systems. Applicability: the purpose of this subsection is to provide standards for CSCS consisting of ground-mounted solar panels, whether fixed or movable, capturing energy from the sun and converting it to electricity. The provisions of this section are based on ground-mounted photovoltaic facility using a rammed post construction technique and panels supporting the flow of rainwater between each module and the growth of vegetation beneath the arrays and limiting impact of storm runoff. The solar arrays will be mounted in constructed foundations rather than rammed earth posts. The application includes Exhibit 1, Site Plan Documentation, Exhibit 2, Operations and Maintenance Plan, Exhibit 3, Decommissioning Plan, Exhibit 4, Documentation of Legal Authority to Construct on the Property, Exhibit 5, Manufacturer Specifications. The Perkins County Planning Commission, after due public notice in the official county newspaper and posted in 3 locations, held a public hearing on May 12, 2025 at 7 p.m. in the Perkins County Courthouse meeting room, and the request was heard. The chairman opened the floor for public comment. No public comment was made. Board discussed the proposal. Midwest Electric and Premier Energy presented the plan for proposed solar farm and answered any questions the commission had. It was moved by Randy Dingenbach and seconded by Tim McQueen to recommend approval of the request of conditional use permit 02-2025. Roll call, all present, yes. Motion carried. The Perkins County Board of County Commissioners, after providing due public notice in the official county newspaper, held a hearing on June 16, 2025 at 9 a.m. in the Perkins County Courthouse meeting room. The request was presented at that time. However, the commissioners deferred action on the item to allow concerned neighbors the opportunity to discuss the proposal with the property owner in Midwest Electric. Following those discussions, the property owner in Midwest Electric amended the original application, relocating the proposed project approximately 1/2 mile east to an adjacent parcel under the same ownership as the initial application. And you will see in your packets, I did copy and paste the regulations, and then in red wrote what page in their packet that they provided to us. You will find the answer. So they are meeting all regulations that we have in place with the request for the 2 amendments listed in the statement of fact. Let me know if you have any questions. Is anyone from Midwest here? Oh, there you are. I thought I saw you come in.
Come over here so you're not looking directly into the sun. Jason Bishop, General Manager, Midwest Electric. So yeah, as just some quick background to follow up on that. It's okay, I guess I'll speak now. So yeah, as Taylor outlined there for you, we originally put in an application, or this application was on the west half of this quarter, and as she mentioned, there was really not anybody who spoke in opposition when we were here last time in May. But subsequent to that, the arts who are here this evening came to the commissioners meeting, and we've both been to several commissioners meetings now, explaining what's going on and trying to work back and forth. They did not not like how close to their residence that it was. So the commissioners had asked a couple different times for me to go do some more checking and see what other options we might have and things like that. And long story short, basically what we've come up with is we had offered to move it a half mile east, like Taylor had said. So it's on the same quarter. It happens to be a different parcel, but it's the same quarter as before. But it gets almost a half mile from their house, where before it was a couple hundred yards maybe. We did look at. They had asked me to look at some other options if there was options, different directions. I tried to look around as best I could. I'm not gonna tell you there's no other options, but there weren't any other that kind of fit the profile as far as some ground that was available, somewhat level terrain, landowner that was willing to work with us and not be roughly the same distance from somebody else's house. So what we are proposing to do is to move it that half mile to try to get a little farther away. It does go over a little bit of a rise in the terrain. It definitely does not obscure it totally, but it at least partially obscures it from their property anyway. So that's the reason for the amended application, and I think it's pretty well covered in what Taylor described to you. But yeah, it would definitely be, we're not doing both of these two. If the approval is, if we grant it for to move it the half mile, then we would not do the other one or withdraw the other application or whatever is appropriate. It sounds like maybe just amending it is fine. So yeah, it would just be this one.
Thank you, Jason. Does anybody have any questions for Jason?
I guess we didn't know, or at least I didn't know that it was that close to the artist's property when we voted on it last meeting, May 12th, whatever it was. So I'm not sure I made a motion to approve it, but I'm not.
Do we have any other comments, questions? I agree, because we're hoping after we found out, because the first time we got a card in the mail, it wasn't the right, I guess acreage that was on there. The second card we got, we went home, and so we never had anybody actually come to the house and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. So, I always thought, once we heard about the possibly a feasibility study, and I will say, Jason, he's been very nice to work with, and he's working on another end. But I'd like to know, how can the solar, who's benefiting from it, and how is the county going to benefit from it? So, and I realize that also, money, or you applying for something, you have so much time to do that, but there's a lot of things out there, or a lot of things you hear about solar. Is it really all that good, and what is it gonna be 5 years from now? Is it gonna be obsolete, and all the equipment and so forth? So, I guess from our standpoint, we're still questioning this. Plus, we asked, what does this do to our property value? And that can't be answered now, as they told us, they don't know. But we assume, might know it's gonna go. So, thank you. Jason, do you want to address any questions that she brought up?
Yeah, so as far as who's benefiting from it, so Midwest is gonna own we're actually doing 4 different sites. This would be the second one in Perkins County, 2 of them in Keith County. Midwest is gonna own and operate, probably contract for some maintenance, but it's gonna be under our umbrella. And the reason why we chose 4 sites and the size that we did is, because that allows all the power to be used by Midwest Electric, so it would all be used for Midwest Electric members. And our plan and all of that is, it's just one way we can have to try to keep rates as low as we can for our members, which is everybody that buys power from Midwest. Is it gonna be a huge number? No, it's not, but it's one way to kind of basically lock in some cost of power going forward. So it does amount to millions of dollars over 25 years. You're not gonna open your next bill from Midwest and go, oh man, that's good. My bill dropped in half, but it does help keep that down. So that's the main thing we're gonna do, or the main benefit. The secondary benefit would be, as Light Source will tell you here in a little bit too, there is a nameplate capacity tax, which is basically an in lieu of property tax number. And so that gets paid as county property tax basically. So it would go to all the same entities that would normally get property tax off that parcel. So the ground itself is still taxed as whatever the ground is, whether that's dry land farming or grassland or whatever that is. And then the Midwest would be paying the property tax basically on the value of the solar equipment. So those would be the 2 things that would be benefits to the area.
Jason,
Mhm.
so there is no chance that electricity would go outside of Midwest?
It really shouldn't. If it does, we've got a lot of other problems to deal with. I mean, the whole system's connected, so is there no chance? No, but the design is to keep it small enough, because if we push it up on the transmission grid, then we have to jump through a whole bunch of more federal regulations and pay for transmission access and everything like that. So yes, we're gonna do everything we can to, and the design of it is just to keep it on our system.
So I just have a simple question about the placement of where this is.
Can you state your name, please?
Josh Day. So when this site was being proposed or whatever for this 10 acres, if it was such a great deal, why didn't Cummings just put it by their house? They have 2 houses. I mean, they could have placed it right by their house, not dealt with neighbors. So that seems like could be a huge question coming up.
That was one of the questions the commissioners kind of asked too. The short answer is, closer to a substation is better. This ground happens to be right across the road from our substation. It's just a mile, well, not even a mile south of Grayton. We've actually tried a couple other locations trying to find a place that was as workable as we could for everybody. Bob just happened, he knew we were looking, and he called up and said, hey, I've got this ground that's right across the road from your substation. Would you be interested in doing it there? So it was just kind of an opportunity that presented itself is the short answer.
Jason,
Mhm.
I have a question. So if it was put where you're proposing and those panels turn, how do you know that the light or the sun isn't shining right on our farm or our property?
That's part of the reason why why we went with the system that we did, and that's the reason for asking for the variance on the height. A lot of systems are what they call a single axis tracker. So they would be basically just tilting back and forth east to west to follow the sun across the sky. Ours are a dual axis tracker, so they not only tilt back and forth, but they tilt up and down to follow it through the seasons. So they're basically going to be pointing at the sun all the time. So anything that's being reflected back off is just reflected right back at the sun, basically, because that's where they're going to be pointing all the time.
how long are those panels, on the tax rolls, and then who's paying those property taxes indirectly?
Okay, can you say your
Melissa
name?
Sauter.
So the first question, I think if I had your first question right, the panels we have spoke for have a 25-year performance guarantee. So they do, all panels degrade over time, they're not as efficient, but they're guaranteed to perform at a certain level for 25 years. Sometime about that time, I probably won't be at Midwest anymore in 25 years, but sometime about there, they'll have a decision to make. In my mind, it makes a lot of sense, because to just replace the panel and start over another 25 years, because you'll have a lot of the infrastructure already there in place. Probably panels will be much more efficient, or some other technology in 25 years as well to help out. But to me, it'll be a very small, relatively smaller investment to replace those in 25 years and just keep the project going. Was that your first question? So yeah, 25 years is the kind of the baseline number. So somewhere in that is what we're planning on. As far as property taxes, that's one thing that the legislature changed a few years ago. I don't know when exactly. As I understand it, what was happening was some companies would put these in and depreciate it real fast. So there'd be a big bump in the property taxes, and then trail back off fairly quickly. So the legislature changed how they do that, and that's where the nameplate capacity tax comes in. So they said, you're just gonna pay a tax based on the generating capacity of the system, and that is in effect for as long as the system is active. So it's probably a smaller payment up front, but instead of going away in 5 or 7 years or whatever that is, it's for however long the system is in operation.
I'm Daniel Lane. Say in 25 years, your system is outdated and the landowner wants to go back to farming, will the company clean up the ground and make it back as presentable as it was when they started?
Yeah, so there's two things on that. First of all, our initial leases for 25 years, we have the option to roll it to another 25 years for the reasons that I just stated. So it's possible, or in my mind, likely that it'll go on longer than that. But yes, in the event that, whenever that is, that it goes out of service, or somebody doesn't renew the lease whenever that comes up, there is language both in the lease agreement with all our landowners and in our conditional use permit application to clean everything back up. And there's actually bonds in place, or there would be proposed to be bonds in place, cleanup bonds basically, to return the ground back to, take everything out of there and return the ground back to original status.
Josh, did you have another question?
Yeah, so you said it only gets taxed if it produces?
As long as it's in operation. So yeah, and I think there's language in there as well, if it doesn't produce for like 12 straight months, then it's considered not operational anymore, and all the cleanup kicks in if it's not operational for 12 months. And there might be a threshold in there. I'd have to look again to be right honest with you, but yeah, you can't just let it sit there and say it's still in service.
Right, so this could be put in, never run, and not make the county nothing.
Well, you
I mean,
you owe
could.
the nameplate tax not on any production, you owe it just on whatever the nameplated capacity is. So it doesn't really matter how much it produces, you're paying that. And like I said, there's a provision in there that if it's not generating for 12 months, it's considered to be taken out of service, and all the provisions to clean it all up kick in at that point.
I got a question. Marvin Jean Kuski. How much is this gonna end up costing the farmers, the city, the taxpayers to put this in? And what happens if that farmer that you're leasing from decides in 5 years he doesn't want that on his property, he wants nothing to do with it again? Then all that is wasted.
Or he dies, or he he sells, or he does whatever.
Or, yeah, his kids take over or something.
So the second part of your question first is, yeah, we do have a 25-year lease on it. So, we have that signed up to be dedicated to the site for at least the 25 years. And like I said, it's that Midwest option to roll that a second 25 years. So we would have the authority to have that on there for 50 years, I guess, if we would choose to do that at least. The first part of your question, this all kind of started several years ago. The program that we're going through to help get the funding for this is a federal program from a couple years ago that put money towards lots of different infrastructure projects, but clean energy was one of them. So we applied for a loan from the USDA, which is how Midwest actually already funds most of our infrastructure projects anyway. We do loans. That's our bank, is the USDA. And for any of the lines we build or substations we do or anything like that is our main source of capital funding. So similar process for us. So it's actually a loan from the USDA is the main funding. The program that was put in place allowed a 20% loan forgiveness. So that obviously helps pay for the project. There's also tax credit available to that. So we would be taking advantage of that. So the short answer to your question is Uncle Sam's paying for half of it, which has its own good and bad parts of it. My theory all along has been, I think that money's gonna be spent, and so we're all gonna pay for it anyway. We should probably try to bring some of that here and get some value out of it if we can. People might disagree with me on that, but that's been my theory in doing it in the first place. And so we should get at least half of it paid for with federal funding options. And then the rest of it would be Midwest Electric members paying for. But again, our analysis has always been, if we get at least half of it paid for, and I think we can probably get more than that, then the rest of it is going to be fund itself basically, because it will be reducing the power that we're buying from Tri-State Generation and Transmission as our power supplier right now. So it'll be reducing our expenses that we're paying from them, and so it's a cash flow positive at that point. So it's actually, Midwest is paying for it, but it's cheaper to do this than it is to buy the power from our current power supplier.
So what is your cost projection for this whole deal? What is this gonna be?
So all four sites combined, we put in for a $16.9 million loan. And we're getting about half of that paid for, we should get at least half of that paid for through the programs that I was just talking about. So it's roughly, 3 of them are the same size, one of them's a little smaller, so it's not exact, but they're roughly $4 million a piece for the 4 sites.
Jason, isn't it true that most of that government money's all gonna go away in the next couple of years?
There's lots of different layers to that. They did put, it was caught up in the freeze, back in January or February, whatever that was. But they did go back and release the funds for this program that we put in for. So we actually have our actual loan documents done. We're just getting all the paperwork signed in the different counties and getting that sent back. So I mean, I guess I'd never say absolutely, but everything has kind of gotten released and moving through for these projects that we're working on. There's other restrictions that have gotten put in on it, but they kind of backed off them a little bit. There's a couple different timelines to work on now, but the shortest one is as long as you begin construction. I think it was a year from when the law was signed, which I believe is July 4th, 2026. As long as you begin construction by then, you're still good to take advantage of the tax credits and such like that. And we're planning to start here in the next couple of months anyway, so we should easily make that deadline.
Question over here. I'm Mitzi Gartrell, and I
out my window and see Jim Lori's shop building from my house. And so as the crow flies, it'd be right over that. And he said, you may not be here in 25 years, but we have, our daughter's family lives just west of us. And so theirs is even closer to Jim and Lori. And I want them to live there and enjoy the country life. I'm not interested in having this at all. And when you're putting this little postcard out, I think you ought to do it more like they're selling land and have a little map and show people where that's gonna be in comparison to these homes. Because like when I was looking at this,
Oh, it's Mandarin Chinese.
but when you said that they're moving it a half mile on that quarter, is that like from one edge to the other edge on a quarter?
Quarter's only a half mile wide.
Right.
How are you gonna move it a half mile on a quarter?
Well, that's an approximate number, and their house is a little south of that too, so, yeah, I mean,
But then we're north of it.
it's a couple hundred feet, it might be a couple hundred feet short of a quarter mile, or a half mile, whatever that works out to. But we're
And
moving it
then-
as far as we can on the same quarter.
And
So,
then
it was
our family
next to the
lives-
road and now it's off the road.
And then our family lives north of that then,
Okay,
so. I kind of agree with if they want it, then put it next to them. Same with feedlots and everything.
Dan?
Dan Thompson, did I hear right that the cleanup, there'd be bonds sold or whatever? Are those gonna be in place before any construction?
yeah, that's a,
Because my concern, it would be if there is a, in construction, you said if it goes idle for 12 months, then well, if there's no money to do the cleanup,
right.
how is it gonna get cleaned up? It's gonna be out there, an eyesore.
Yeah, that was a provision, that was the word I was trying to come up with. The provision of the conditional use permits was that would be, that money would be set aside up front so that it's there to be covered whenever it would be needed.
And how do you know what it's gonna cost to clean it up in 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, or 25 years? Or if your lease gets renewed for another 25 years,
Right.
right there.
That is the tricky part, is it's hard to know what the right number is. Part of it is, and I'm not the expert on this, that'd be more, the consultants or developers that we've been working with, so, but as it's been explained to me, that you put that money aside, at today's dollars, and then between what that money does over the next however many years that is, and then also, there's also some residual value in it, so there's a lot of aluminum structure and different things like that you could get, you could recycle or whatever the case is. So that's our best estimate as to what would cover it. My own personal opinion, and I'm not trying to speak ill of anybody else in the room, but I think that's one nice thing about this being done by Midwest Electric is, I feel fairly confident that Midwest Electric will still be here in 25 or 50 years, if not something real crazy has gone on. So, and, we're run by that board. All of you, or probably most of you, are members of Midwest Electric, so you're the ones who can show up at an annual meeting or show up at a board meeting or whatever and say that this needs to be done, because it's all local people who are in control of it, so.
Along the same lines there, Joe, if you're next to that, and due to sabotage, storm, equipment failure, whatever, you get contaminated,
with hazardous material, who and what is liable for that?
So there, I mean, it would be Midwest Electric, so it would be covered, under our insurance policy, just like all our substations are and everything like that. There shouldn't be any hazardous material really in there, I don't anticipate any situation that would be a widespread catastrophe, but yes, it would, to the extent that anything needs cleaned up, it would be Midwest's and probably covered by our insurance, depending on what caused it.
Any other?
Keith Sykes. Technology working, going at the speed of light, what says in 9 months from now that this is not all gonna be outdated? And who's gonna, is there like updates possible, upgrades, who's gonna pay for that? And how's all that work?
Sure. So, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, yeah, there's probably gonna be advances, like, if those panels work for 25 years and then, there's probably gonna be a different technology or more efficient panel or something like that. So yes, definitely it's always changing. But we can basically just look at what's available now, and we can look at that and go, okay, this is what's available now, this is what it should do over the next 25 years, and we think that it makes sense, financial sense for Midwest to do it even with what's available now. But yeah, you're always at the risk of missing out on the next thing whenever you start, but if you waited 9 months and then did what the next thing, then you might have been 9 months ahead of whatever the next thing was. So that's just where we think it works with what we can do right now.
I thought there was a period of time that there was to be a feasible study, like a year or more. A moratorium till that could really be looked at.
There is, but it doesn't cover anything that was applied for prior to when it was enacted. And this application was in before that was adopted.
Yeah, Al Payne, Doolittle here. I guess I had a question in regards, this would be for my brother Oz, he's not able to be here, he's in Africa, mission term, but he has his house right here by the sewer lagoons. Put a lot of effort into building a place, and I wondered, I guess he's concerned, who of us in this room wants those solar panels by our house? I think if you ask anybody here that has a house in the country, they don't want those solar panels by them, and I don't blame them. I think the property tax, what's the value? I mean, it's not gonna increase the value of the house, I would think, having there, and they're not pretty. So I wondered, okay, so the substation's an issue a little bit. To me, the substation's pretty small compared to what 160 acres of solar panels around your house is gonna be. I mean, he's not a fan of it at all, and I don't blame him. I'm all for improvement in the community, but I think we need to be considerate of those who have made a country place and have put a lot of effort into to be in the country and then have solar panels built around your house. It wouldn't be really appealing to me either, so I'm just putting the word in for him, so.
No, point well taken, and just point of clarification, that's the other application that's coming up, is the one gonna be the one by his house, and ours is different scale, but yeah, I understand your point.
Do we have any more comments for Jason's project?
I have a question. So looking at the map, the actual solar panels, is that gonna be on a 10-acre?
Correct.
Okay, so
10
it's
acres.
not the whole 80.
Correct, the 80 is just a parcel on which it's located, but it's a
Okay.
maximum of 10 acres for ours, which is basically gonna be a square. I think it's roughly 700 feet, makes a 10-acre square, in the south. So it'd be the southeast corner of the southwest.
Starks, I know from where Midwest moved it over, does that help? I mean, obviously you guys prefer it not there at all. Is that kind of agreement between you guys on the movement, or is that Jason's Midwest proposal?
We're thankful that he made it there. Does it make it, we now say, oh, yes, no,
Right.
no.
Okay.
But grateful when he gets it.
You might address this, I didn't hear it, but you got a 10-acre plot. On practical terms, how much is that gonna produce? Like, how many homes would that furnish electricity for?
So, don't know the homes right off the top of my head. The three of the sites, which this one would be one of the three similar sized ones, since maybe Light Source has a better number for me. But they're basically 1 megawatt in size total. The thing that always resonates to me is our average horsepower. Obviously, we've got a lot of irrigation wells around here. That's our big load. 13 100 horsepower wells is a megawatt. So 1 megawatt to me is 13 wells. It's a pretty small percentage of our power for a year because we run. Most years, thankfully, it's actually been wet this year. We haven't run as much irrigation so far, but it's only about 2.5% of our kilowatt hours for the whole year, but that's largely driven by that summer irrigation load. 3.5 megawatts worth of generation, which would be the total of the 4 of them together, can be somewhere between roughly 20% of our load for the 8 months out of the year that we don't have irrigation wells running. So it's a decent chunk of our load through the other 8 months out of the year. It's fairly small. They're telling me, thank you, 400 to 700 homes per megawatt. So appreciate that. So somewhere in that ballpark. And yeah, as Dennis mentioned, thanks for reminding me, Dennis, all 4 of the sites do have a battery associated with them. And basically, what we're doing with the batteries is supplementing our existing load control program. So as a lot of you know, we offer load management on irrigation wells in the summer. So our irrigators can sign up to be shut off part of the time, and they get a reduced rate for being shut off part of that time, because we can save money by lowering that peak at the highest levels. And that's basically what we're gonna do with the batteries as well, is use that to kind of along the same lines as our load control program to try to shave that peak down, and that also saves Midwest money that way as well.
So at 1 megawatt a year, isn't that only like $3,500 a year in tax revenue?
Yes, I believe it's 35 something. So like I said, it's a fairly small number. They changed it so it's a smaller number per year, but it goes on for the life of the
But that's the total tax revenue from the 10 acres.
Correct. Yes.
Is there not a way to utilize those solar panels on someone's existing well in their pivot, if that's where it's, you can find 13 pivots, 13 wells that those solar panels could function on instead of placing it close to people's homes, which it will decrease the value. I don't wanna buy a home that's anywhere close to, that's what I see when I look out the window. And I get what your goal is, and I appreciate that. Is there a better way? I mean, I'm guessing with your grant, it all has to be together in one spot. But for the sake of the people that live in this community, none of us wanna see it. And if you want to utilize the solar panels for your own purposes, okay. That's not going to affect what I'm seeing when I look out at my home, where it's not gonna decrease the value of my property or make it harder for me to sell someday if I want to.
Yeah, a couple things on that. First, it is just a little too big for Pivot Corner, unfortunately. Those are 7 acres roughly, and probably not quite that much usable space for this. And that's kind of what I alluded to earlier, and like, I'm not here to tell you that there's no other options, but it's kind of a balance between close to the substation, ground where the train works, having a landowner that wants to work with you. So like I said, we're doing 4 sites. On 3 of the sites, it was actually the landowner that came to us and said, hey, I would like to do this on my property, would you be willing to put it here? So, and I know that doesn't resolve all the neighbor questions, but it was easier to know you had at least the landowner where it's gonna be decided wanting to work with you rather than going out and trying to find something.
That part makes sense, it's when it affects other people that don't want that.
The other, and again, I've told the artists this, and I do appreciate, we've had good conversations that we don't quite agree, but we've had a good working relationship, at least in my opinion anyway, and we've tried to find some solutions, we've tried to look at other options. All 3 of the other sites are within the half mile of at least one house, and that doesn't mean that they should just take it and be happy with it. It is just kind of hard to find. It's surprisingly hard to find a spot that works, that fits that criteria. And because you go north or south on their road, and there's really no other place. The problem is the roads don't go east and west right there, so it kind of limits the options. But you go north and south on that road, there's about it's barely a half mile from the village of Great, for that matter. And just anywhere you go on there, it's tough to get more than about that far from somebody's house. And I don't blame them at all. I'm not saying that means they should like it or anybody should like it. I'm just saying it is harder to find a spot than expected.
Jason, just out of curiosity, does the landowner get anything except for the lease out of it?
Yeah, just the lease, they get the lease payment from us.
No kickbacks on electricity or anything? Okay.
How much is that? I don't know if I'm at liberty to say that number, to be honest with you. I would probably want to check with the landowner and see if they're all right telling me that, because that was agreement between 2 parties, so.
I think it should be public information, that's part of our structure that we're supporting.
So Jason, looking at the map, and I understand that there's not a road that goes east-west, but there's always easements you can get to access it. Why didn't you go a half mile to the west where there's virtually nothing? I mean, I don't know if that's pasture or if it's CRP.
Yeah, that was the first time I was at the county commissioners, that's what they asked me to do, is, well, it looks like there's no houses going that way, can you do that? So I went down there and I drove around that, there's almost, the highway's not on the section line, but it's roughly 6 square miles that are right there. And I couldn't find a place to get a vehicle back. Now, I'm sure it does, there are options. The best trail that I found was completely flooded when I happened to be there when I was there. It looks like on the overhead, it looked like there was a trail coming in from the south, but it didn't look like somewhere where I really wanted to be driving all that bad. So there's kind of a couple things on that. The biggest thing is, we do have to get some bigger equipment in there to build it. And I just don't see how you can get bigger equipment to deliver the material and put it all together when there's no road access anywhere. So I couldn't even get close enough to it to try to look at it and see if it kind of laid flat or if it's pasture or what it is. And again, you can get easements, but we do monthly substation inspections on all our substations now, and so we would be doing at least monthly inspection on all of it later. So yeah, just getting vehicles down there on a regular basis was not all that easy either, in my opinion.
But it might be something you have to look at. I mean, look at those wind chargers,
They put those up in the middle of pastures to make a road going in there, cause it's millions of dollars. And there's a gate, and they have to go in and check those all the time. I mean, it might be something we have to look at, a little further away out the middle of nowhere.
That would be, I don't remember off the top of my head, and I don't know what they do for the swing chargers, I'm sure they span multiple landowners. You know, maybe we just might have to get an easement from one landowner to get across to another one, and like I said, I'm not saying there's no other options, but it just gets a lot more complicated real fast when you start, bringing a whole bunch of other stuff into it.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. Do we have any discussion?
I'm assuming everything passed on all the requirements, setbacks, everything's okay?
Yes, with their two, request arguments, yeah.
What were the two requests?
Height request, and then it will be the whole,
Red post.
Ram toast, thank you. I was so close.
You're right there.
Well, with no other discussion, I would look to the board for a motion.
Do you have an official motion that we will be?
As I said before, I voted for the last motion because we knew it was as close to their house as it is. I think we didn't have all the information for the last time we voted on it, so I regret that.
We don't need a motion. We're just thinking.
Discussion.
Yeah, you got that motion, I discuss it.
You, it would either be a motion for recommending approval or recommending denial to the plan, or to the board.
Second.
So we need a motion to,
It's either approve it or deny.
yeah, do you have anything written to that effect as official?
It'll just be, a motion to approve or a motion to, or, excuse me, a motion to recommend approval or a motion to recommend denial of the request, and then you'll read it as the agenda.
So, I said, never spoke before, so I will abstain.
But if this gets denied, then the original one is not there.
Correct.
Okay.
Just keeping in mind that it is a recommendation to the county
Right.
commissioners to approve or deny.
So really, what we decide here means nothing. Realistically, we dig in and we say, yes, we accept it, we listen to what people would want to say. And if we say, yeah, go ahead, it goes to county commissioners and then they are the final.
So when I first started, in this role, it was explained to me that your planning commission, your visitor committee, all your recommending bodies to the county commissioners are in place because the county commissioners can't know everything.
Right.
So you guys are the planning and zoning gurus and you make that recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, or the visitor committee people are the gurus, they make that recommendation. And so they're, relying on you to make a recommendation on your knowledge of the regulation and what you hear here today.
I move to accept.
I can read this. if
Okay, read it.
you want.
And you read it and see if I like it.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion to recommend approval for Midwest Electric Corporation for conditional use permit 02-2025 for a commercial solar conversion system located in the west one half of the southwest quarter of 231035 in Perkins County, Nebraska.
So moved.
Okay, quick clarifying question, did you say the west half?
That's what I have written here, but it should be east half.
They amended this for the east half.
Okay.
My apologies.
Okay. So we have the east one half of the southwest quarter, 231035. Okay.
Thought I got you.
Okay, we're good?
Out of 153 pages, you did pretty good.
And I have a motion by Shannon.
Do I have a second?
I think in all of Perkins County, we could find a place that was a good mile from somebody. I mean, it's Perkins County. Nobody.
Tom will second.
It's a chance to vote. That's right. Okay.
I have a motion to approve the request for Midwest and a second, so we will go ahead and vote.
I should ask if there's any more discussion.
Any more discussion?
That's a motion to recommend.
That's what it said. Yeah. Request.
Okay. Randy? No. Gavin?
Abstain.
Sustain?
Abstain.
Abstain, okay. Tom? Yes. Greg?
No.
Tim?
Yes.
Donnie?
No.
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 Jim is absent. Shannon?
Yep.
And Nate?
No.
Okay.
Would you end up with one?
We have 4 no's, 1 abstain, and 3 yes. So do we need to motion to not approve?
Well, I think that, I think you have.
A motion to not approve?
Yeah, I think the commissioners are gonna move on.
Okay. So we'll do the same, recommend, we have a motion to not approve.
Recommend denial.
We recommend.
You're still making a recommendation, it's not a recommendation.
Right.
So in the motion, can we include the reasons, our reasons?
Well, I think you ought to explain it.
Right, I mean, should that be part of the motion? Yeah. I just didn't know if that's what you wanted, if that's what should be in there. I would make the motion, what you said, denial, with the reasons for locating it a mile from a residence, a distance from a residence, preferably on non-production active residence.
Well, it's either we're denying or
Right,
approving it,
that's what I'm
but
saying.
he's wanting an explanation,
Right.
but,
I got it.
okay.
Yeah, you're good. So,
There's no thing on why, I mean, obviously, the motion's just gonna be.
And that doesn't stop the commissioners from doing what they want anyway, so.
Okay, so we have a motion to deny.
five.
Yes. I mean, great.
Second that.
Greg made it. Nate seconded.
We have, motion to deny the request and a second, so we both can vote.
Okay. Nate,
Yes.
Shannon,
No.
Jim is absent. Tanya,
Yes.
Tim,
This is with the reason that it's too close to the residence.
correct? Well, that's one of them.
That,
We're
that was
leaving
it,
that.
that,
Yeah,
Let's see if.
that's our explanation.
yes.
Obviously, they have to review the whole.
Yes.
Whole thing.
Greg,
Yes.
Myself, Tom, no. Gavin,
I need to abstain.
and Randy.
Yes.
We have 5 yeses, 2 noes, and an abstain.
So with that. Move forward
Any application we receive moving number, then start over again, it's a new parcel. So located in the north half of 171038, the northwest quarter of 81038, north half of the northwest quarter of the south half of the northwest quarter of 191038, the east half of the 181038, the east half of 81038, the east half of 191038, the southwest quarter of 91038, the north quarter of 251039, the north quarter of 301038, the northwest quarter of 291038, the southwest quarter of 201038, the southwest quarter of 191038, Perkins County, Nebraska. Alright, the properties are zoned general agricultural, transitional agriculture, and airport airstrip approach. Article 6 Supplemental District Regulations, Section 601 Application. The supplemental regulations set forth in this article qualify and supplement all zoning district regulations and are declared to be part of this resolution and applicable to all uses and structures in all zoning districts. Section 61409 Commercial Solar Conversion Systems. 1. The purpose of this subsection is to provide standards for CSCS consisting of ground-mounted solar panels, whether fixed or movable, capturing energy from the sun and converting it to electricity. The provisions of this section are based on a ground-mounted photovoltaic facility using a rammed post construction technique and panels supporting the flow of rainwater between each module and the growth of vegetation beneath the arrays and limiting the impacts of stormwater runoff. The rammed post construction technique allows for minimal disturbance to the existing ground and grading of the site. Based on the assumed solar farm designs, Perkins County finds the use to be low intensity with minimal trip generation, low amounts of impervious cover, and low emissions, thus the use is compatible in urbanized, non-urbanized, or low density areas with other uses. 2. Conditional use permit. A CSCS shall require a conditional use permit. The applicant shall complete and submit the conditional use permit application specified by the county and shall submit, among other required materials specified in the application form, a detailed plot plan drawn to scale showing the layout and all main components of the proposed CSCS. The application for conditional use permit shall also show property lines, existing structures, and features on the lot, proposed locations of solar panel arrays with respect to property lines, and dimensions of the proposed arrays of solar panels, as well as other required details. Uses and approximate location of structures on adjoining lots shall be shown and identified. The parcels are the north half of 171038, property Hemling Farms LLC provided written consent. There are 4 current structures on the parcel. It is zoned both AA and general agriculture. The parcel is 307 acres. Northwest quarter of 81038, property owner Marvin Stump provided written consent. There are no structures on the parcel. It is zoned AA, that's 148 acres. The north half of the northwest quarter of the south half of the northwest quarter of 191038, property owner Hemling Farms provided written consent. There are no structures on the parcel. It is zoned general agriculture. It is 123 acres. The east half of 181038, property owner Louise, I am so sorry if I messed up anybody's name. Deaton provided written consent. There are no current structures on the parcel. Zoned general agriculture, it is 221 acres. The east half of 81038, property owner Marvin Stump provided written consent. There are no current structures on the parcel. It is zoned AA and general agriculture, 291 acres. The east half of 191038, the property owner Hemling Family Trust provided written consent. There are 3 structures on the parcel. It is zoned general agriculture. It is 320 acres. Southwest quarter of 91038, property owner Marvin Stump provided written consent. There are no current structures on the parcel. It is zoned general agriculture. It is 157 acres. The northeast quarter of 251039, property owner Bruce Young provided written consent. There are no current structures on the parcel. It is zoned agriculture, or transitional agriculture. It is 151 acres. The northwest quarter of 301038, property owner Bruce Young provided written consent. There are no current structures on the parcel. It is zoned AA and general agriculture. It is 161 acres. The northwest quarter of 291038, property owner Barbara Mavis, trustee, provided written consent. There are no current structures on the parcel. It is zoned general agriculture. It is 157 acres. The southwest quarter of 2010-38, property owner Barbara Mavis, trustee, provided written consent. There are no current structures on the parcel. It is zoned AA and general agriculture. It is 166 acres. The southwest quarter of 1910-38, property owner Leo Colson provided written consent. There are no current structures on the parcel. It is zoned transitional agriculture. It is 166 acres. Signed applications with appropriate fees were received. The proposed facility is not within a floodplain, with the exception of the very southeast corner of northwest quarter 3010-38. The rest of the ball is clear to someone. 691 property owners within 3 miles were notified of the request of the conditional use permit. The comprehensive plan notes under future land use plan, page 85, under land use component, concepts for agricultural uses. In order to abide by the principles in general land use planning concepts presented above, the future land uses in unincorporated areas of Perkins County should continue to be dominated by agricultural production, including crop production, pasture land, hay production, livestock production, and related and compatible agricultural uses and agribusiness uses. The comprehensive plan notes under future land use plan on page 85 under land use concepts. Concepts for transitional areas for non-agricultural uses. Through the 10-year planning period, there will be additional non-farm residential uses and additional commercial uses, which will be added to the land use pattern in the county. These non-agricultural uses can be best situated in what can be best referred to as transitional agricultural areas within 1 to 2 miles of the existing communities within the county, so that the occupants of these uses can have easy access to the service offered in these communities, so that the public service such as fire protection, which are typically headquartered in these communities, can be provided at minimum expense. Encouragement of additional non-farm development in areas in and close to the communities will also help support the local economies of each community. The applicant is requesting a waiver on section 1010, expiration of conditional use authorizations. Development of any approved conditional use shall be commenced within 1 year of the date of approval of such conditional use by the Board of Commissioners, and development of said each conditional use shall be completed within 2 years from the date of approval of such conditional use by the Board of Commissioners, or such approval is automatically revoked. Development or completion of any conditional use authorization that has been so revoked shall be permitted only after reapplication and approval of such conditional use application by the Board of Commissioners, in the manner herein described. In certain cases where the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners find it to be appropriate, a waiver to the above deadlines may be granted in longer time periods for commencement and completion of the project may be permitted. However, this waiver must be a part of the initial application and discussed as part of the public record in both public hearings. Any changes to the deadline must be duly noted on the application copies given to all parties. Exhibit A of the attached application, to add an additional 2 years for start of construction and 2 years of the end of construction deadline.
city has over 30 projects, solar projects and battery storage projects in operations, about 12 states in the US. We are the largest solar and sheep raiser. So instead of using traditional lawnmowers, we actually use sheep, and so we really are about dual use, and expect on this project to have hundreds of sheep instead of lawnmowers, and to keep it into a grazing part of the community. Just to let you know, we had an open house, and thank you for those who attended our open house. We had over 50 people earlier this month at our open house. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just cover a few of the questions that came up in the open house. One of the big ones is, why are we coming now? So what happens is our interconnection process is with Southwest Power Pool, and it's a long process of interconnection. And oftentimes interconnection results come back and they're not good. Well, luckily this project did come back good in terms of interconnection, but now we have a very large $5 million deposit due early next month. And then with the pending moratorium, so that's why we're coming to you now, instead of what we normally would not do this in an expedited process. So we apologize to the community and to you all for coming to you in this expedited manner. And what happens also with all this tariff talks, we've had to put millions of dollars at risk to make the project financially feasible. The project is over $350 million that doesn't cost the taxpayers and the ratepayers any money. This is going to be a life source PPP, it's going to be a private investment. The tax base over the life of the project, which is about 35 years, 40 years, it'll bring about $39 million to Perkins County. 21 million of that will be going to the school district. And I know there's a lot of concerns about neighbors. We apologize that we have not been able to reach out to every neighbor and have conversations. We've put in our application that we'll have at least a 500-foot setback from neighbors, and we're going to continue these conversations that we're having. We appreciate the good conversations that we've had. We understand that this is a shock, and we did not mean to come to this as an expedited process. And we are going to be using vegetation screening, so we recognize that this is very different than what you guys are used to and what Perkins County is used to. We're hoping to have sheep and then work with the local beekeepers to really keep it with the spirit of Perkins County. We also, it's our goal to be a good stewards of the land and be a good neighbor. So what we do is we do soil testing before and then every few years of the project. And so it's our goal to actually return the land to the neighbors in actually better shape. And we'll actually do soil testing to prove it. We do seeding with a very specialized seed mixture to help with the sheep grazing and to help return the soil in even better shape. And we recognize that from the community feedback, we recognize that we now want to go south, and we're actively moving the project. So ideally, there's not going to be anything north of the highway, it'll all be south. And that's based on community and county commissioner feedback. So again, we appreciate the good conversations we have. We know this is an expedited process, and we apologize. What happens is to make this project financially feasible and to go forward with this project, we're expected to, and we have been doing large financial obligations. Normally, we were planning to come to you guys with what's got the interconnection results from SPP and do this longer, but with the moratorium, with our financial obligations that we have as part of the project, that's why we're coming to you now. And I want to introduce my colleagues. Adam works with me on development. Some of you have had conversations with Adam. Adam and I are available. We'll stay after the meeting as well to have conversations. And Chandler is our community relations manager. Chandler works during the development phase and through the operations of the project, and has had really good conversations with many people in the community. Thank you so much.
Any questions or comments? Dan?
Dan Thompson here again. Did I understand right, there's something about the airport approach? Is there any pilots in here? Has anyone checked with the FFA to see? FAA, what is it? The federal whatever.
Aviation.
If this is fits into their requirements or whatever, cause I know we're originally from Imperial Chase County. And a number of years ago, with the new school and the new football field, they put up the 4 lights, cause everything was told okay, and that came in, and they had to chop down 3 of the 4 lights. I understand that's not closer to the airport, but it's not that we have a huge airport, but we do have a number of ag flights coming in and out here, medical flights. So has that been looked at?
Yeah, so Adam, I go to development manager. Oh.
This is one of 3 questions.
Yeah. So I guess to address the airport question, there has not been any studies done to this point with our particular project. However, there are airports all throughout the nation that actually have solar panels on their property. And so I don't, if you're worried about, is that gonna be causing issues to your pilots as they're, coming and going? I would say just by conclusion of.
But you haven't checked.
Not this particular site, correct, but there are airports with solar panels on the physical airport property all throughout the nation.
Okay, my second question, how many people you said live within 3 miles?
It's not people, but, households or property owners, and we sent out. Yeah.
Do you have like how many are within a mile?
No, because 691 property owners within 3 miles were notified. The regulations stipulate that with any conditional use permit, any property owner within 3 miles is notified that that request was made. And so that is the circle we drew, and that's what we went off of.
Okay, the prior property, there was what, 1, 2 properties?
There was, 60 some notified within 3 miles.
Within landowners.
Right.
Landowners.
Landowners. So it would be safe to say there's more people within.
I sent out 775 postcards total.
Okay.
So you can do that now.
Okay. The board disapproved, or the other one, now this one here even has a number of more people.
Yes, and I will just real quick on the airport. Perkins County has 3 zoning districts: general agriculture, transitional agriculture, and then that airstrip. And it is just like, okay, so it's the airport, but it's actually a larger chunk of land around that as well for expansion, but those regulations read really similarly to transitional agriculture. So without looking at the map, it could just be kind of on the edge. I know it wasn't a whole lot of that, so it's not on the airstrip specifically, just to give you an idea of space.
It's on the approach. It's on the approach to the airport.
It's on the approach, okay.
As a pilot, do you see that being an issue?
The only issue I would see, I mean, there's many different, because I was on the airport advisory committee here also when they set up a lot of these regulations. And so it's glide slope, it's height requirements, and then it's kind of a funnel shape also off each end of the runway. And it's, the main thing would be height. You're not gonna deal with the height issue with the solar panel. The issue that I would see, and it's quite honestly, as a pilot, I never thought about it until I just sitting here thinking about it, you brought it up. But, is more of a, how close to the airport are they? And would it be more of a glare issue causing a distraction on a pilot coming in a VFR, visual flight rule situation?
And as a pilot, you want to have good visual.
Oh, yeah.
Coming in and going out.
Yeah, it tends to help.
It could be a life and death matter.
Yes.
And if your plane would crash into Grant, that would be Not a good thing. Not a good thing.
I would say the panels are built to absorb the light and not reflect it.
Okay. Third, final question. You said BP has a number of dollars invested in this project so far?
So we're a wholly owned subsidiary of BP.
Okay, and you
Correct,
haven't,
we have a large, $5 million financial security due, early next month.
but you got money already invested.
And we already have money vested.
And where is that our problem?
It's not at all.
Why even bring it up?
I'm bringing it up as to why we're coming now.
And then, you apologize that it didn't short notice. It almost seems like this is just being rammed down our throat and everything. I think you're probably, running out of time to get a lot of these projects. And,
So I would say like, as far as running out of time, if you're referring to like government subsidy or anything like that, we are not like actively seeking any type of government assistance. If there's tax credits, as Jason mentioned, like we will capture those if it's available, but that is not something that we are reliant upon as a company. As Amity mentioned, it was mainly, with our interconnection process, that's been a 2+ year process and will likely be a 4-year process. It's just where this moratorium is lined up with our payment schedule. Again, not your problem, but that was the reason of why this, was expedited of sorts, and we didn't have to sit down with every single neighbor. We're here admitting that this has not been the most standard approach to a development process as we would do with all of our other projects. But this, moratorium just popped up, maybe a month and a half ago. And I had spoken with the county maybe 2 weeks prior to that, and there was no mentions of that. I even referenced the current solar ordinances that are in place for Perkins County. So we were just kind of reacting off of what, came from the moratorium.
thank you.
With your interconnection, what other communities have you gone to get this in place? As far as, I assume you want one here, where are you gonna put your next one?
Well, so I cover SDP, Southwest Power Pool, which is panhandle of Texas to Oklahoma, all the way north to South Dakota. And so we have another project that's a little bit further along in development, eastern Nebraska. We've got a couple projects in Kansas, active development, Oklahoma, Colorado, which is a different market. We've got Arkansas, different markets, as Amy mentioned, roughly 30 projects that are in operations, several more throughout the US that are in active development, which is where this would fall right now.
So,
Sorry, I had to.
Go ahead.
why are you interested this close to the DC tie?
So basically, when we cite a project, which is, where am I gonna place it? So where do I wanna target? So I'm gonna target flat, dry land, large chunks of land owned by, one person if possible, and transmission access. And then on top of that, transmission access that has capacity. So all of that fell into Perkins County. And so there's, the substation southeast of Grant, which is where we were planning to plug in the project. And so that's kind of the general reason of why this area was targeted.
So you keep bringing up the moratorium. Why not wait a year and see what the county wants after the moratorium is ended and we have some regulations? I mean, why quickly get it in before?
Yeah, well, that's a fair question. So Perkins County currently has solar ordinances. And so that's also part of, my deciding process whenever I'm looking for a place to potentially build a project. If there's an active ban or moratorium or a lot of opposition in the county, it's probably not a place we would start. Just, why go somewhere you're not wanted? And so when I spoke with the county, we talked about the current solar ordinances. You know, these are the rules, play by the rules, and, you know, then you just plug away and get, you know, file for your permit. And so, when the moratorium came up out of nowhere, that's kind of why, you know, and it's tough for us to continue investing in the interconnection project and development expenses, whether it's paying landowners, doing all of these studies that we perform, if we don't know how the county feels. And so that's also why it's kind of tough. If you guys know, hey, we want to implement A, B, and C into our solar ordinances, that will be done in 12 months. But when we were here, you know, for the last planning commission meeting, I believe, you know, West Central had mentioned they have not taken any action on what is to be implemented in one way or the other. So it's tough for us to continue when we don't know what's coming at the end of that 1 year. And if it is 1 year, you know, it could get extended.
Which, the way I view that is, at the end of the 1 year, every citizen of the county would have a chance to voice, to have those regulations amended to suit us. So I mean, that's why I would view waiting until after that, and then you'd be able to say, ooh, that doesn't fit, let's go somewhere else. Rather than, let's push it in before.
No, I get what you're saying. It's tough balancing that, because do we, you know, put the faith into the community that, you know, as we're continuing to spend millions and millions of dollars that are non-refundable, to maybe come back in a year and say, you know what, turns out we don't want it, you know, and that's not your problem, that's, you know, that's a problem. That's a risk that we're trying to decide between right now. And so, if the temperature is, you know, yeah, we're pro-solar, we're just trying to get a better understanding, that's different than, you know, if it's completely negative with opposition, then we probably won't continue to invest in the project. And so, that's kind of a, you know, chicken and egg scenario. Yes,
How
ma'am?
many miles from the highway, north and south, would these solar panels be?
Yeah, so the current design, that's a draft design that you guys may have seen in the newspaper a few weeks back. That was also part of the expedited, hey, we need to meet the requirements of the permit application, so, which requires a design to be submitted. That was a very preliminary draft, you know, less than a 10% design that would have never made it out to the public if we weren't rushing to you know, get in while we can, kind of thing. And so that current design, which we are actively trying to relocate, is, you know, just north of the highway, you know, the adjoining parcel to the highway on the north side. And then south of the highway, I believe the substation is roughly 3/4 of a mile. Everything would be south of that. So, you know, 8+ miles off of the highway to the south. And so that was when we came to the county commissioners meeting a month ago. Commissioner Bottom and Commissioner Tucker both had mentioned, hey, this is pretty close to the highway. There are some houses on the north side. I think you'd be better received if you guys look to relocate off of the highway and go south. And so that is why, if you see on the map there, there's some parcels that are highlighted a different color. That we have since had positive feedback from some of those landowners to include their parcels in this permit application, because, you know, we listened, we heard you, we're trying to move the projects out of the substation, consolidate the footprint. It would be better for us, it would be better for you guys, I would imagine, since that's kind of the sentiment we've received. The original reason it was so split is because we had one landowner with all the acreage needed for the project. And so, again, I look for the least amount of landowners that I can, because it's easier to get one person than it is to get 10 people on board. And so, just from a leasing perspective, that's kind of.
But the location would still be within the legal descriptions that
yes, sir, so all the parcels, you know, they're either under current site control or current letter agreement allowing access to be included in this permit application. And so we would then pursue that same site control lease agreement with those new parcels to sub out the land north of the highway, trying to get everything south, and then consolidated, just a much smaller footprint.
So we're actively moving to be, 0.8 miles from south of
Highway 23.
Highway 23.
So all the parcels north were still part of the application. So you have 2,368 acres as part of your application.
Correct, with language in there that commits to no more than 1,100 acres total being part of the project. So we, then we implemented the 500 feet setback from, the residences. And so we included them just to keep them because we had them as part of the original, but, that's what we were actively looking to move from the north to the south.
And then we're continuing conversation. It's at least a 500-foot setback from residences with a visual screening. And why we wanted the additional acreage is so we can move away from residences.
Well, why did you not just remove them from the application though? I mean, if you're gonna only do 1,100, why keep 2,300 on it?
We're in active negotiations with those landowners in the south. So some of those landowners in the south have allowed us to be part of the application, but we have not signed a lease option yet. We're working on those lease options.
You're moving closer to some of the people south though. You might be moving away from the north people, but you're moving closer to.
I would say that there would only be 1 to 2 houses if everything was south of the project. Mr. Doolittle, who is representing his brother, I believe, is one, and then, gentleman by the first name of Dick, Tolson, I believe, is the second within the 500-foot plus radius of those, property borders.
You had said that it's millions of dollar project that you've already invested.
Yes, sir.
How much of that has been invested into the people that have the leases versus the?
Infrastructure, like Southwest Chronicles. So we had original lease in 2023, was the first lease with the landowner. We recently have a second lease that's been filed in the county, and that was earlier this year. I believe those are those are annual payments. I'm not at liberty to discuss the terms. But that's just I would say the landowner.
But other than the landowner, no money has come to Perkins County.
Correct. Yeah, unless yes, short answer, yes. However, roughly 1 million per year, if the project was to go through.
Any other questions?
Is it my understanding this is gonna hook up to the transmission line, so the power's gonna be leaving the county?
So,
Yeah.
no, so the power would go pretty much directly local, but then how I've been told this from it can pull to where it's needed from there. And so it goes onto the local grid, and then from there, if there's an outage in the county to the north, it's basically, if you're pouring water into a bucket of water, it's all in the bucket, it's all right there. Is it at the top, is it at the bottom? It's on the grid, and so it starts local, and then it's pulled to where it's needed.
How big is that grid? So is it going to Denver if they have outages in the summer?
I would say that's probably a little too far away. They would pull from somewhere closer than Perkins County first, and it's just kind of a chain reaction of sorts. And so projects, 120 megawatts AC, which is what would be good.
I was wondering how far west of Highway 61 it is.
Forgive my ignorance on where Highway 61
Okay,
is.
Highway Highway 23 goes east and west, and then at the 3 mile line, 61 goes south, comes in through Grant, goes on that 3 mile where you drove past all those houses. That's 61 and 23, and then 61 goes south.
We're at that existing Grant substation, so sorry, we'll look it up on a map.
So it's a half a mile south of, west of that highway too?
One of the properties will be, yes.
Denise Johnson, the million that you're referring to would come in the form of property tax on the equipment that would be there?
Correct.
Yes, so there's multiple taxes. There's the nameplate capacity tax, which is the standard, instead of pricing out the equipment and how much it's worth and taxing it, it's just a flat tax on that. But then there's just the increased, land value that we would all be responsible as light source BP. It's no additional tax burden to our landowners, no additional tax burden to any of the local community members. Any updates that are required at that substation or to the infrastructure, 100% our burden. It's not like your electric bill's gonna increase due to our project or anything like that.
Yeah, and again, it's $39 million to Perkins County in terms of tax revenue. 21 million will be going to the school district.
Every year?
That's over the life of about $1 million a year.
So $1 million a year from the project, it's split between Perkins County, the Perkins County schools, the hospital, Upper Republican, there's like maybe 6 or 7 breakouts. And of that 40 million, 21 of it over the life of the project would be to the school.
And the life of the project is 40 years?
25 with an option to extension.
So what, the 21 million that we keep referring to?
Yeah, it would be,
is
it's
that
based
over
on 40 years.
45 years?
That's based on 40
That's
years.
based on 40 years.
Yes, sir.
So that's 500 a year.
500,000 a year, basically.
39, yeah, sorry, 39 million over 40 years. Whatever that is.
I have a second question on the decommissioning of the project. I'm assuming it has the same language that the first project we discussed with Midwest was, that you would clean it up, you would take it out
Correct.
and return the land back.
We will have
as-
a decommissioning we have a decommissioning plan that we submitted as part of our application, and then we will be doing a financial security, a financial decommissioning bond to make sure that Perkins County is not obligated to pay for the decommissioning. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be doing soils testing before, and then with the life of the sheep grazing, it's our goal, to prove to the landowners that we're actually returning the land, and to Perkins County that we're returning the land in better, even better soil health than when we started.
And do you have any of these proposed, what you're proposing here, are there any others in the United States that are now operational?
Yes, we have over 30 projects that are operational in the United States, in about 12 states. And a lot of those have the similar decommissioning language and decommissioning bonds.
What's your name?
Denise Johnson.
Thank you, Denise.
Josh.
Josh Day. So I just, a quick question is, so the landowners that are gonna receive money from said lease, how many solar panels do they have 500 feet from their house? I got it, 0.
0.
So that's kind of my question. I mean, doesn't seem to be affecting the landowners. They seem to be gaining with no risk. And my second question is, if you signed a lease with a landowner 2 years ago, why are people just know about it now? I mean, if you've sent checks to a landowner, said landowner that's not here tonight, I mean, that's right around my house. I mean, I probably should have been the one notified right away. So I mean, I'm right in the middle of it.
Yeah, you should have been notified earlier than you were. I 100% agree with you there, Mr. Day. The interconnection process, is not a guarantee that we push these projects forward. So we don't introduce them until we have a better line of sight on how these projects are going to develop. And so we applied for projects, they look good on the interconnection. The next year later, it doesn't, and we withdraw the project, and no one other than the landowner really knew anything about it. And so we don't, you know, involve ourselves with the community too early. Obviously, we would probably not have, you know, had to expedite this without the moratorium, so it would have looked completely different. You know, we're the first to
Right.
do that.
I mean, how many solar panels do you guys got by your house? Apartment, complex,
Sure.
wherever you
I have
live?
solar on my roof.
On the roof?
Yeah.
Okay. Not 1,000 acres, not 2,300 acres.
And I live
On
close to
the
a solar
roof.
farm.
It's yeah,
Right.
I get what I can't relate, cause I don't
Right.
live next to that, but it's tough because you could make that argument for if there was livestock, you know, what if, you know, someone wanted to start.
But the county has setbacks for livestock.
Yes, the county also has setbacks for solar.
I'm not,
No, I understand, so it's tough, like it's tough, like
Right,
someone
I mean,
might not like what's going on next door. It is a tough thing to solve. I'm not sitting here.
right.
Trying
You're
to
not
figure out
denying
what
it,
to say.
I guess, is what you're saying.
We're not
But
denying it, yeah.
upfront honesty would be easy, you know, I mean,
We weren't.
we got a whole room full of people that are obviously against it tonight, you know, and I mean, I guess if we, you know, kept it quiet, a lot of people wouldn't have known about it. So, I think that was my feeling to push through this quickly, so hopefully everybody thinks of that, I guess, why it's getting pushed quickly through trying to.
Dick, did you have a comment?
Dick Sullivan, 500 feet, that's not even an eighth of a mile, I don't think. I mean, yeah, if you're living out there and you got the solar panels that close to you, that's, we're talking half mile up there, I think, that's too close. And another thing is, the height of those panels, if we go by what Jason said, it's 15 feet high.
We do have ours will not be 15 feet high. That is.
So how high are they?
I think Perkins County regulations is up to 15 feet. It would be closer to 10 at max height, I believe.
Okay, so what's the setback at the intersections? You know, we've had people had serious wrecks with corn that blinds the intersection. That's only there just a few months. These are gonna be 24/7 for 40 years.
So I believe we're standard practice 100 feet from roads.
At 10 foot, that's probably not enough, is it?
And that's our fence line.
Yeah, that's just the fence.
That's just our fence line. The panels are back even farther.
And then the next thing, if those panels are that tall, what about the snow drifting across here? If you're gonna send them that close to the property lines, and people that have spent a lifetime growing trees out there, that's gonna pack in there and be hard on that windbreak get that out there.
Yeah, we have projects that are in the northeast that have lots of snow. We have not had any complaints or any issues due to snow.
Well, you
drifts
can come
yet.
out to my place, I can show you where the last big snow we had, and the machinery I have is way less than 10 foot tall, that drifted in there and it killed some trees, so. And then if it drifts across the road, what about Midwest, how they're gonna get down the road to service their lines? On the south side, the east side of the road.
Well, I'm confused on the comment. We wouldn't be blocking any public roads.
The snow, the drifting snow. I mean, you look at the interstates, you can see how far back they set their windbreaks or their fences from the interstate, so that kind of tells you how far that snow's gonna drift.
Are your fences to where you can't see or it's just like a sheet fence,
It's a
just a
game
regular?
style fence.
A what?
Game style.
Which is?
It's it's like wooden posts with almost like a fancy chicken wire of sorts.
You'll be able to see through.
You will be able to
Yeah.
see through.
It's wooden posts with some wire.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, 1.4.
How are these solar panels gonna save, are they gonna save the city electricity, or are they just gonna save the agriculture people on their electric bills?
So, I can't comment on what it would do to your electric bill. That would be between you and your electric provider, but I'm pretty sure there's regulations put in place to monitor that. The biggest investment and benefit to Perkins County is not only the increased energy, the new infrastructure to the, utility equipment, and then the $39 million over 40 years of tax revenue.
Would Midwest have to modify the substation or make it bigger to handle all the electricity coming into it from this?
It's actually a tri-state that owns that substation, that Grant substation. It's a 115 kV substation.
Okay, but they have to do it.
And then we'll be working with them, but our understanding is that there's actually a bay available that we'll be going into.
So
And we'll be paying for any of those upgrades.
Anything,
Yeah.
any cost comes out of our pocket, nothing,
Yes.
it's a tri-state,
Well,
Midwest.
we've already had initial conversations with Tri-State in 2023 when we put in our interconnection application. And we are talking with Tri-State, but it's our Lightsource BP's financial responsibility to connect into that substation. Of course, the interconnection interconnection agreement would be with Southwest Powerful, SPP, but of course Tri-State would be consulted, and we do what's called a facility study that's coming up next with Tri-State.
Denise Johnson again, back to reference, you have some that are up and running, you said, in various states. Could you be specific and we could go maybe look online or do some research around those?
Yes, so our website will have links to all the projects, lightsourcebp.com. Arkansas, Colorado, Kansas, would probably be.
And I think I have a brochure.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
the most
Yeah.
neighboring states.
Dennis?
Dennis Campbell, Jason, I'm the part of Southwest Power Pool. Can you speak to the benefits of?
Yeah, so, indirectly, yes, but I always say the more I know about the electric industry, the less I understand it. But yes, in the Southwest Power Pool, which like you mentioned is, I believe, like 14, covers parts of 14 states, all the power is just put into one big bucket, like you said, and then people buy it right back out. So yeah, they would be selling the power into the Southwest Power Pool market, and then Tri-State or NPPD and whoever else would be buying that power back. So kind of to Dan's question earlier, it's gonna take the path of least resistance, for lack of a better term. So yeah, I would assume a lot of the power is actually gonna be used by Midwest, even though we don't have a formal agreement with Southwest Power Pool, but Tri-State does, so a lot of that power is coming out of that pool, and since it's being generated here, it'd be used, a lot of it would be used here also.
Blake Property, you said 40 years you would have a plan to get it out of here. Is there any plan that you'd stay after those 40 years, say it works and it's great, and you just continue to make it work?
We would love to, and then we would, we work with the landowners to sign extensions for current leases. And then likely, as Jason mentioned before, solar panels would be replaced throughout the life of the project. So we would love to, and then it would be up to the landowners to continue with us. But if the infrastructure's there, we're already connected into the Grant substation. So thank you for the question.
The offtake would have to also want to purchase another 20.
There's a lot of.
Yeah, a lot would have to line up, but.
Just, it made it sound like after 40 years you're done, pick up out here, you make your money, you're done.
If someone wants to keep it rolling, that's very much on the table. That's just kind of the standard length of it.
Adam Chandler, I can't promise he'll be here either, but we'd love to,
Do you maintain the systems, or is it?
Correct,
your
yeah, so
crews that
Lightsource
run off?
BP, will subcontract with an O&M provider and have 2 or 3 people out on site, oftentimes with pickup trucks, checking the inverters, checking the panels, making sure that the roads, and making sure the fences, So, yeah,
And sheep herders?
and sheep herders,
I'm
correct.
just throwing that out.
Yeah,
there.
exactly.
I'm an old sheep herder, so that's what I'm saying.
And this is probably more for Jason and stuff, would you, with this, with tri-state, could you see some rate stabilization, maybe some increases, maybe that may be coming from tri-state that might stabilize our situation here?
I mean, again, I think that's the whole point of, similar to our project, that's the whole point of it, is it's kind of a way to lock in costs, and so you have it locked in versus your other costs that are maybe going up with inflation. So is it gonna be a big number? No, but I would say everybody's gonna be hurting for generation, NPPD's building generation, Tri-State's building generation, Basin Electric out of North Dakota's building generation, so everybody's hurting for as much generation as they can find. So, yeah, it's hard to put that number on it, but anything that is available is gonna be used.
I know Tri-State's shutting down a lot of coal, so
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Dan, did you have another question?
Just one more comment, by your own admission, you said BP's made some mistakes, going through. How do we know just getting rushed through, there's not gonna be more serious mistakes made?
I would say, like, the development process as a whole has been a mistake. As far as the path of how the permit was applied for was not our standard practice. We would have taken more time to visit with local officials, locals in the community. The design would have been more finalized, because we would have been further in the development process, but nothing, I wouldn't even say it was a mistake, it's just a hand up. It wasn't our standard practice here.
But this started 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yes, sir, 2023, so.
And now it's just coming.
This project.
This project.
Yeah, this particular project, and so.
2, 3 years ago, and now it's just all
Well,
showing up, yeah.
it's pretty standard to not apply for permits when our lease options are 6 years is kind of standard. So you wait until the development process is a little bit, further along and the project, is progressing positively as far as development expenses, interconnection, before you apply for a permit. And so.
And I'd agree with what Jason said, the interconnection process, the more you know, feel like the less you know. So what happens is Southwest Power Pool just gave us our interconnection study back. And the results look good, whereas I'll be honest, most of the time we come in, we apply for interconnection, and it doesn't look good, so we don't move forward with the project. And we don't want to waste the whole community's time on a project that isn't moving forward in terms of interconnection. So SPP just gave us those results. And that's part of this whole process, part of it is SPP, and the interconnection process is just very convoluted, and to say the least. I think Jason might agree with that.
And when did that process start?
Which process?
In
To get the study done.
2023, we
October
applied
2023.
with SPP, and they just gave us our interconnection results.
So there's multiple phases. It's
Yes.
phase 1, they'll study 500 projects that were submitted all throughout the Southwest Power Pool. They assign upgrades based on how many projects are in this area. Are you causing upgrades, or is there enough capacity for your project to not put any strain on the grid? And then they divvy up upgrade results based on that. So that takes about a year minimum for one phase historically. People get the results, they see that it's way too expensive, half of them drop out. So now instead of 500, we're at 250 that put a deposit in to kind of continue to play in the game, pay to play to go to the next round. Okay, so now instead of 500 people, there's only 250. Maybe my upgrade strains are no longer, so they restudy again and say, well, now your upgrades went down, or now they went up because you're the sole bearer of that cost. And so we're at phase 2, that we just got those results back, and there's this third phase that will be done after this. And so it's pretty common after the phase 2, before the phase 3, is if there's 3 rounds that we need to make it through, we're not going to apply for a permit after the first round. And so, like, you know, we wouldn't, to answer your question, we, you know, the permit application would have probably been a little bit later if, you know, we weren't met with these conflicting timelines.
So if I had a crystal ball, I'd be way better at my job. And the problem is, we don't wanna come into a community and say, hey, this is gonna happen, and then the interconnection results are bad, and then we're having to withdraw. So as Adam mentioned, it is kind of a balance, and I personally apologize that we're coming to you in this manner. It's not exactly as Adam says, this is not our standard. We don't, you know, we don't try to do it in this expedited way. At the same time, this is where we are in the project.
And I'm confused, I think you brought up a couple times of planting stuff grass and having sheep graze. Maybe I should ask these, how many sheep farmers we have in here? I'm sure we got I'm sure we got a lot of cattle ranchers. I mean,
Yeah, we would love to do solar and cattle. Cattle tends to rub and they're just so
Exactly.
strong, and just the amount of metal it takes to hold up a solar panel is just not feasible right
but
now.
I guess
Hopefully
my
someone
point
can-
is,
yeah.
you know, you're talking about sheep grazing and stuff, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but we don't really have that here, so.
Recognize that. Yeah.
We do partner with local grazers. We have a whole department that has nationwide partners that I think we have over 40,000 sheep that are grazing or pastured in our facilities throughout the country right now, all the way from up north in the northeast, Pacific Northwest, all the way down into El Paso, Texas. So we have an entire area of different types of grazers and partnerships throughout the country.
And that would all be brought in.
We work local first, and we move outward if no one is available. We always start local. I want to also address your question.
Here we go.
How much money has gone to the county so far? This is usually the way that LightSource works, is that we stand to partner with the county in more direct ways after construction starts, because of all the things that Adam and Andy have been discussing. Here are the local organizations that stand to benefit tax-wise from this. Perkins County School District 0020, Perkins County Hospital, Mid-Plains Community College Educational Service Unit 16, the Grant Fire District, and the Upper Republican Natural Resource District. In year 1 through 10, that will equal out on average of $1.1 million a year that will go back into those organizations.
Split between all of them.
No, that amount will have an amount that goes out.
To all those entities. I mean, $1.1 million is a lot of money, but.
Correct, split between
Where you get, this entity gets a little bit, and this gets a little bit, and this
We
a
would
little
follow the
bit.
current splits that are designated.
by the county, yes.
Is that more than what the normal tax rate would be on the farm ground? Or is that less than? How does that figure compare with the tax rate of the irrigated grass?
Are you asking if it would be an increase for the county?
Well, are they gonna be taxed on their farm ground and they're gonna pay a tax on top of that? Or is that tax gonna just take place of the farm ground tax?
Yeah, it's in addition, and so whatever the existing tax is, if it's, you know, $10 an acre, it might go up to, say, 100. We would pay that $90 difference. Then there's also the, you know, the nameplate capacity tax. You know, I think we've listed, I've got all it's like, you know, the property tax, the nameplate tax, the land use tax. All of that tax burden falls on us, and it is more than what the current land owners are paying in property taxes now. Yes. No.
Wayne, did you have a question?
Yeah, this is more to the board. This is the taxpayer in general. I don't think any of us are against solar.
No.
Just a lot of us don't know nothing about it. I think that's the reason the commissioners decided to do a moratorium. Great example is 30 years ago, we screwed up with the landfill in this county. Now, they just renewed that. I think the commissioners have done a great job. They know more about it. We've had time to see how that works. I think a lot of what's going on here is we just don't know. We don't have expertise in this county on multi-million-dollar projects like this. you know, somehow, we need to get somebody in to educate us and moving forward. I just hate this, I mean, multi-million-dollar project, the county does not need a mistake. They need to do it right, but if they can do it right, I'm all for it.
Joe, did you wanna?
Well, I was gonna ask, I assume all these are gonna be anchored with cement.
Incorrect.
But you're not.
We use zero
Okay,
cement
how
for our
much
piles.
cement and where's it coming from?
So for the piles that are driven into the ground, zero cement to fix those piles.
They're driven into the ground.
Just,
Okay.
yeah,
So
so,
about 4 to 5 feet into the ground, and they can be, I've been told they can be ripped out with a tractor if you really want them to be. So,
yeah, so it's not as far as, you know, letting the ground rest, restoring it back to its current state. Yes, it would be a quarter section of ground primarily covered in solar panels, you know, as far as like, you know, from a bird's eye view, but as far as the actual impact of the ground itself, it's fairly minimal.
And then we do seeding, to do with the seed mix that the sheep really like. And so the sheep then graze to keep the vegetation down.
So in a drought year, how do you get that water?
Yeah, the way the solar panels run off the water, there's actually vegetation strips that we're seeing, even in drought conditions. And the sheep really like the shade of the panels, and they like that vegetation strip. Our sheep grazer can kind of share with us.
in answer to your question, we do
Yeah.
not irrigate it.
And we do not irrigate it.
There is no, you're not drawing water or pulling water from any source.
We gotta water the sheep.
We will,
'cause
we will
they-
be giving water to the sheep. Yeah.
Water for no and whatever,
Yeah, Ron Patrick here. I commend you folks very, very highly. This is a project, to me, is a no-brainer. I know we've got problems, we have problems with everything that progress is involved. I really commend you. I think that we've got a lot of negativity here tonight. I think we have negativity when we don't know the situations. And so you've helped us to understand those things. I appreciate that very much. And I know that in a lot of projects, the negativity comes out so strong so many times. Grant is not like that. We are a positive community. I know you heard bad things about what might happen. You heard a lot of no's. That just really got to my heart when they said no. And so I hope that you won't take this night as being what this community really is, because there's a lot of positivity here. We're ready to go.
I appreciate the kind words, and even the folks that have expressed opposition have done it respectfully, so I don't have ill will towards being here. I enjoy coming to town whenever I do. And I'm more than happy to give anyone and everyone my business card, my cell phone number, call, text. I will answer any question you have, if you don't get a chance to ask it tonight.
I have one quick one. Before you get your project finished, do you try to get, your contract for your power you're going to produce?
Yes, sir, so
You know, say you're investing a lot of money, and if you don't have a buyer on the other end, so.
Correct.
So when you contract that, where does the power go? Will it, is Midwest gonna step up and take a big chunk? Is Tri-State, or is somebody, I think we're all concerned that it's gonna go to Washington or wherever.
Yeah, so, fair question. So, yes, the power purchase agreement will be done before any type of construction. Obviously, that's crucial. If we don't have someone to purchase the power, we have no project to build. So, yes, Tri-State's probably number one customer on the list. We've actively have, our business development team is in charge of all the offtake. They're currently monitoring what the rates look like for us to sell the power today, what it looks like for us to sell the power in a couple of years when we would plan to have the project online. They know the market, they've got connections with Tri-State, NPPD, OPPD, heck, I've enjoyed visiting with Jason. I don't think that's the most realistic scenario, given the size of, Midwest, but
So the power basically will go where the money and the contract needs it.
it goes to the local grid regardless of whether,
It does, but where does it end up?
That's a great question. Yeah, so it goes onto the grid, so like, I wanna say NPPD has a line coming out of that Grant substation, so either them or Tri-State would be the two parties that we would, try to get this agreement with. Someone in Oklahoma is not gonna wanna buy the power in where I'm from here in Nebraska, so it's like, we only have a few.
How far does Tri-State bring power to Perkins County?
That is a very long answer. The short answer to your question is if they're doing a 100 megawatt project, it's gonna go as far as until 100 megawatts is used up. In the middle of the summer, it's probably, well, not today, because we're not using as near as much power. Last week, it wouldn't have left Midwest territory, because we could use all 100 megawatts.
On the middle of December, where would it
In
go?
December, so we're only using we'd probably get about the first 15 megawatts of it, and then it would just keep going up from there so it probably, if I had to guess, within a couple 100 miles anyway of right here.
But Midwest would not buy.
Yeah, we wouldn't be buying it directly,
Contracted
but
through.
somebody else would be buying it on our behalf.
Obviously, then it comes back to you in the summer when you're needing it again, kind of thing, so it's just kind of ebbs and flows.
My question is back to the board then, does it matter? Are we opposed to generating power here in Perkins County and letting Sterling, Colorado use it? Or do we think the power, all these solar panels that everybody thinks are gonna be so ugly should be by Sterling so that then they can use the power and then we pay more to get it? But I'm just wondering your logic behind that question.
If that's for me, I guess it's kind of like a feedlot. If the feedlot's close, we have solar panels close, and the guy in Sterling doesn't see a solar panel, but he's getting our power. I think that's a little what we're thinking a little bit.
I won't smell that.
I can figure out, is it good for our community?
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that if you had to live 500 feet from it, glaring or whatever,
Right.
would you want to?
Right,
Is
I understand that.
What it comes down to.
I don't
think we have that much glaring.
So yeah, again, they're
Yeah,
built
there's not
to
glare.
absorb the light, it does us no good if it's reflecting it,
But-
it absorbs it to generate the power.
But the decision a little while ago was that it was almost too close to the artists, and that's further than 500 feet.
Yeah,
Just a comment.
right.
I agree with, Josh, I think, and some of these other people here, let's make sure you do it right. This is not gonna be for a year or two, it's gonna be for 40 years. And I'm not against the solar power, but we can say yes a year from now. And if they don't wanna do it, maybe they'll do somebody else. That big a deal. And then number two, BP just announced last week that they're divesting themselves from the green energy, the wind power and the solar power. What's their interest here if they're selling their wind generating stuff off the coast, and then they're trying to build, I don't understand what their philosophy is there.
Would you like me to answer to that question
Yes.
specifically? So Lightsource became a wholly owned subsidiary of BP in 2024, so we used to be 49%, and they wholly owned us at the end of last year. They also had at the same time a CEO change, and this is the CEO's directive to do that. So the CEO there has stated certain things. However, if we look at BP's ledger, Lightsource is one of the top performing subsidiaries of BP, outperforming Castrol Oil, which I'm sure a couple of you might be familiar with. So it is one of the most top performing subsidiaries of that. So even though that might be stated, that is a CEO directive that has not gone into effect and probably won't affect Lightsource for a good while yet. There's no timeline on that. There's no directive that has been passed down to us, the employees of Lightsource. So even though that is news, I agree with that. I've seen those headlines as well. It's not something that even I just wholly acquired at the end of last year. So I understand the concern of the headlines, but this goes a lot deeper. It's still Jason. I can give you a very long-winded answer, but that is a very condensed answer to that concern.
We had a letter from Patsy Croker was brought in, and I just wanted, to make note that we did acknowledge, that for her. It just says, I'm not totally against the solar panel farm, I just don't want it where my other landowners have to look out at their front door. For the most part, so. And if things are moving south, that's probably not even an issue.
Which is what we're actively trying to do.
Right, for the, in the comment of acknowledging Patsy's, notification, so.
And has anyone in the room driven by a solar panel farm area?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And is that, okay, I have two myself in Colorado, and I didn't think they were that ugly, but I'm not living next to it either. But
Well, how many acres did it cover?
it was about a half a mile of panels and.
So half a mile by half a mile is 160. We're talking hundreds.
Bigger.
I'd like, Keith Olson, like to ask a quick question, because I know you guys have the answer. Demand for power is increasing rapidly.
Yes, sir.
And how can we meet that demand? And I think that's kind of what we're talking about.
This is a great opportunity to do that. Solar's one of the cheapest, if not the cheapest, forms of deployable energy, and it's the quickest at this point in time. So to meet the increasing power demands, solar is a great opportunity for that.
I like that question because a lot of people want growth. They want economic development. I spoke with a bunch of you at the open house. I've spoken with people across different communities, and nobody is ever opposed to growth if done properly, if done effectively, in a neighborly way. Growth requires, in the most literal sense, power equaling electrons. Electrons coming from solar is the quickest, cheapest, most efficient, safest, greenest way of doing that. I don't know if any of you have paid attention to what they're trying to do down at Denver International Airport. They're considering building a nuclear fission reactor on the airport grounds because their power demands are growing so exponentially that they're considering building a nuclear reactor on the airport grounds to feed that power source. They're thinking they're going to serve 120 million guests at the airport by 2045. That is exponential growth. They have to power that in a very literal way. I know Perkins is not trying to do that, but you are trying to economically develop. You are trying to grow. You do want a future for your neighbors, for your kids, for your sons, your daughters to live here long term. That requires power. Power provided by solar, by this facility, will help sustain that growth in a meaningful, impactful, and local way that can help this community develop with its power needs. That will only increase. Does that answer your question?
And I think the other thing I'm hearing a lot about is artificial intelligence. It's gonna take tremendous amount of power.
They take a tremendous amount of power. I'm sure your neighbors to the west, over in Wyoming, have you heard about this? This is also, I'm in the power industry, so I'm kind of maybe getting a little bit more on my news feed. But they are developing, there's an AI company or a data management, maybe it's crypto, that wants to use 1.8 terawatts of power. That is more power than the entire state of Wyoming uses, and they want to build it right in Albany and Laramie counties in Wyoming. So the locals over there are having concerns about how are we going to generate that much power if that's the entire state's worth of power going to data centers. Data centers, AI are tremendous amounts. I was down in Anson, Texas, which is north of Abilene, at the beginning of July. They have a AI data center owned by Meta going in there, and they are using entire solar farms where the entire data center will take that entire solar farm and say, that's ours now. That increases the rates for everybody else because there's less electrons on the grid. This is a way, such as what Jason was saying, to put electrons onto the grid to stabilize costs. So if you do have that growth, if you do have the AI or data centers that come to your community, we are able to stabilize and not spike your rates up. I think the average projection from XL Energy over in Colorado is 7 to 9% a year. This is going to help minimize that increase. So while there may be increases, you're not gonna see these giant 10, 15, 20% increases to your rates year over year over year in eternity. Does that answer your question or concern? Great.
Yeah. Chase Sauter, you just talked a lot about economic growth. How many jobs will this create in Perkins County? Outside of Lisa's 3 sheep.
So I think it's around, around 280 during construction would be the bulk of the job creation.
So after 2 years,
It'll be about 2 to 3 people out there for operations with like pickup trucks.
And what kind of salary is that?
A solar technician, you can look online, it's actually pretty good pay, because it is a little bit more.
Well, you have the answer for everything else, just tell us that.
And I would almost say, I think everyone, probably most everyone saw the article that was written a few weeks back. That was one of the comments that was made was, hey, this creates jobs, but it's maybe for 2 years during construction. I don't want to speak for you guys, but it appears you don't want to become the next New York City or Omaha.
No.
So all this tax revenue that would be coming to the county without having to build 3 new schools and a whole new, 6 new apartment complexes to house all these new jobs, it's a long-term impact with a very minimal footprint as far as impacting the local community.
And to Adam's point, let's just say, I think, I could be wrong, Perkins County does not publish this in a very easy to find way. I think operating budget of Perkins County sits around 11 to 12 million a year. And if somebody has a more accurate number, please let me know. But with the increase in tax revenue coming in through these projects, it's about equals a 10% increase to the county's budget without an increasing 10% tax load to you, the taxpayer. So this is a revenue stream that the county can use, desperately need in certain areas, without impacting you, the taxpayer or landowner that live here. So it would increase your services for your schools, your fire district, your conservation district, without saying, hey, taxpayer, pay 3, 5, 7% more.
What you got?
I could be wrong, so if someone knows. So usually around the cities, villages, the city has like a mile jurisdiction around it. Looking at, for zone, yeah. So looking at the map, you guys are really close to that. I almost don't see how you're not over that line. But for as close as you are to the city of Grant, which I don't live there, their expansion for housing, a lot of it's been to the east as well. Have you considered the location of this being so close to the city of Grant that maybe it will halt some of that expansion?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer. Yeah. So again, being as close to the physical town of Grant, I would love if we were, 50 miles away from any civilization. That's, I think, everyone's perfect scenario. But again, that substation, I can't move where that's at, and that's kind of our source to plug in. And so it's a combination of where do we plug in, which landowners are interested, where can we and still abide by the county's regulations. So that's why, again, that initial draft would have never gotten out at the point it did, but we were just meeting requirements with what we had. And so, the initial feedback, hey, we don't like it here, move it further south. So that's what we've been busting our tails to try to get. Heck, we got 800 acres that are willing to, discuss with us. And, we probably could have gotten more if, certain timelines had to do that. So.
But the permit us to approve still has everything that's north of the highway.
If I can get a approval by striking everything north of the highway, that's a compromise we would be willing to make. But, we had it in there, so we had just left it for the time being, not knowing necessarily, was it get this completely off the highway, get a 500-foot setback, 1,000-foot setback, completely, we weren't 100% certain on what the direction was, so we didn't want to carve it out before having this discussion with you guys. so.
Does your land have to be flat, like Midwest was saying, theirs, you know, it lies nicely and it's close to their station that they could have done?
Yeah, preferably, the flatter the better. We don't
Okay.
like the grade, because that's just more cost adding to the project, and so we took, you know, all the land that we've, you know, been working with here is, you know.
So that's why places like the Badlands and whatever in South Dakota, everybody says there's a lot of land up there that's useless, and between Casper and Laramie, Wyoming, there's a lot of.
Correct, if it's not flat, it's not.
But you can't use it because it needs to be
Hard to
flat.
build a solar panel
Yeah.
on.
Okay, well, I figured there was a reason why that hadn't
Yeah,
been developed, but
it's too
it
much
was.
shading and,
Okay.
you know, too expensive to grade the land, so.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Okay. Any more last chance?
Melissa Sauer, I would just say with, you know, how many, almost 700 cards going out to people in this community, that's a lot of people affected by something that's gonna last 40 years, a 40-year decision. And this isn't a small project, it's a huge project. I really don't wanna see it even driving down the highway, honestly. I can't imagine having to look at it out any of my windows, because it's just, it's not pretty, that's not why we live here. None of us chose to live here to see solar panels, we wanted to be living on the land and being part of the land. So I would say any sort of approval would be a very preemptive decision tonight, and even, I mean, with the conversation about this isn't the normal process, what else needs to be done before any sort of approval should actually be considered?
Just to answer that, it was earlier than we would have anticipated. There wasn't anything that we, like, did incorrectly or.
No, that's not, I'm
or-
not
yeah,
making
no,
that
just-
decision, I'm just saying,
No, I get just
there's
trying
not
to.
enough time and not enough information, and it's a huge decision to say that it's an appropriate time to approve it, in my opinion, as a member of this community.
Would it help to you guys' point about the, you referenced the parcels north of the highway, does that, I would assume would help the case if we act them all together? I don't.
Well, I think for the conditional use permit and for tonight, you have them in there. If, I said that on the deal, we have over 2,000 acres and now you might only need 1,000. So I'm assuming tonight we vote on all.
I was told from Perkins County that parcels could be removed on the fly if needed. Couldn't add anything, but if there was a scenario that's being discussed where, you know, cut off an arm to save the body.
You can approve, if you're gonna put something on my property and something on his property, but you don't know which one yet, you could cross it off, right? But you can't just randomly add his property without getting approval.
So we
The other progress, if you have property, you have to give notice to additional landowners. So you notice everybody now that you have to for the whole thing, if you track it, you still have to notice, so that's the reason why you track it.
So would it be okay if we dropped the northern parcels and then went south of the substation tonight?
I think you can do that, or you can make it a condition of the permit.
That's up to you guys.
I'm not
I don't know if
interested.
that's gonna change the yes or no answer.
I'm not interested in drawing out the plan for it tonight.
Right.
That's not why I'm here.
I have a question, and it probably goes to Taylor. If you would defer a decision tonight, could they bring back an amended proposal during this moratorium or not? That probably goes to Rick, or, because if they changed the parcels and made it more
Yeah,
specific.
we're willing to drop the north parcels, that are listed and just keep with the south parcels.
They can subtract, they cannot add.
And would not be adding any additional parcels.
If it is not and this might be a question for Rick, if if it is recommended that it is not approved, and they make adjustments and bring it back because it was submitted before the moratorium, I believe the county commissioners would still want to hear it.
Yeah, that's,
That's recommended. So if it was,
If it's amended, we can't accept any new applications.
right, but if they wanted to see what the final footprint was going to look like, they could decline tonight, they could present a amended thing with the specifics and either a 500-foot setback, which I think is a little too small, and, based on what was said earlier tonight, I'm basing that on. And I don't know what the property, who that affects, but if they can bring it back and it's not upset by the moratorium, then that might be a possibility to do tonight, I don't know.
Yeah, we're willing to do that tonight. We're willing to drop the northern parcels right now. We can strike those in any way, any manner you see fit, and just stay south of this, south.
How does that affect leases that you already have on their land?
Unfortunately, it would be with the landowner, but likely we would,
Well, I assume you have leases with people already.
So we have leases with, one of the maps shows parcels that are under site control where we have leases. There is different color shaded parcels that we, from the response that we've gotten in the past few weeks, added those parcels to the permit with their permission to pursue new leases with them. And so it's not a guarantee that we would get those leases done. That's a risk we would be, willing to take to, try to,
so just to summarize what Adam's saying is all landowners that we're showing have either signed, a permission letter allowing us to be included in this CUP application, or we have an option. The landowners that just signed, a letter allowing us to move forward, we're actively in negotiations.
maybe your question was for the parcels to the north. If we cut them off the permit tonight, that's up to us. Do we want to continue paying those options, even though we know we're not permitted to build, maybe as a salary of sorts, or maybe we, drop the options after that. I mean, it's an annual payment, so, it's, likely could have already been paid for the year, and so we would, I think that's to be determined between, us and those landowners, just knowing that.
Are there no residents south of the highway?
Sure there is. Sure there is. Sure there is.
That's gonna be in there for safety.
But you can still see it.
I bet we could still see it. Second story.
Dennis?
I hear sort of a consensus that a half mile is, what might be needed to satisfy, the residents here. What's the possibility that you would be able to increase that 500 feet?
So ideally, if we could use one parcel then, we're willing to talk about a half-mile setback from residents, but unfortunately, ideally, we'd like to use at least a little bit of the parcel north that's far away from the highway. That's way in the back.
Yeah, just
Plus
like
central.
the larger the setback, it's the, it sucks, that's the risk of, okay, now instead of 1,000 acres to get this project, I need 5,000 acres. So whether that's feasible or not, there are developers that would take that mindset. I don't love that approach, but if you say I need this big of a setback, it's like, okay, we'll just, instead of it scattered, condensed and consolidated to the best we can of a perfect square of sorts, they could be strung all throughout the town and county, which is, I would imagine, a much worse eyesore than, I've experienced firsthand, once you get out here and see driving down Highway 23, not to discredit any landowners or residents south of the highway, But when you look south at that substation, I can't tell what crop, maybe this is my ignorance in farming, but what crop's growing, it's tough to see, 0.8 miles south from the highway, and if there was panels out there today, you might not be able to tell because it's, 6 feet tall from the highway. When you look north, completely different story, and I will be the first to admit that you can see much clearer to the north from Highway 23 than you can south, that's the main drag in and out of town. So, I get that there are residences down there.
So what I get might be,
Trying to
what I get might be
consolidate.
at least a 500-foot setback, vegetation screening, and then we'll try to do, more like what we were talking about. And then,
See, and this is where I think the moratorium is designed to evaluate, to say, half a mile is way too far. And it just needs to be 1,000 feet, 500 feet. That's where I think the moratorium intentions are, so we can learn what makes sense. Because it doesn't make sense, like you guys are saying, to have a half-mile setback. But I think that's why the moratorium was initially put in place, so we can get it right.
That's fair. I think that's part of why we're here to kind of learn what you guys feel. If you were telling me, get the heck out of my town, never come back, that's a different sentiment than what you just expressed. Hey, we want to learn, we're not against it, so obviously, yes, we would love to, make those conditions a part of this permit as it is, which I think is possible. I would probably defer to Rick on that. But you wouldn't have to say no if you want to do a quarter mile instead. It's like that's something you can make a part of our permit today without saying no, come back in a year when, we might not, be here in a year due to the interconnection payments that we've got, which again, not Perkins County problem, but it's also just something to take into account that there's a lot bigger chance of us going away if we're told no to come back in 12 months than work with us through this together. And maybe it's not a firm yes today, but it's hey, this is what we want to implement within this practice, on this existing permit that we've got here. If we needed to drop the parcels, that's obviously stuff that we're doing, but it's just
I'm gonna have
something factor.
a real hard time with my conscience if we told a local company they couldn't have
Yeah.
half of a half mile.
And it's-
And then give 10 acres site, and then give permission here without knowing what more time needs to be.
Right.
That's where I stand, and that's what I think, anyways. I think we just don't know enough information.
Okay, with that, then we have a motion.
Well, I'm assuming we will do the same. A motion to recommend approval of the Light Source BP conditional use permit. And do we need to read all the legals? I'm assuming they're okay.
You wanna recommend approval or deny?
I say we go for approval. If, how it falls. Any comment on anybody on talking that I need to?
You're saying basically do it like we did.
Just do it.
That way we can pass votes on both.
Yeah. It would be a motion to recommend approval of the request by Lighthouse BP for a conditional use permit of 03-2025 for a commercial solar conversion system located in, and then all the legals. I don't know if we wanna read the legals, do we need to read them, Brad? Let's
You can remove it.
So those legals include everything south of the highway, everything that's in your.
Well, that's what we need to decide, that's what we need to say.
If you guys, if it does us any better to drop everything up north, we will do that.
I think it's 10 o'clock at night, we've been here all night, I don't think we're gonna change guns in the middle.
Okay, yes. Understood.
And that might have been a suggestion for you guys. We could have looked at 2 requests, one south, one north, and the other. I don't know if that was feasible. But tonight, I think we're to the point we'll roll.
So are you making that motion, Tom?
I will.
Do I have a second?
I'll second
Yeah,
We have a motion and a second to approve, recommend approval for the request for UP Light Source, so we'll vote.
okay. Randy? No. Gavin?
No.
Tom? No. Greg?
No.
Tim? Donnie?
No.
Jim was absent. Shannon? No. Nate? No.
Okay.
So we make a motion to let, no, recommend.
You didn't have any votes.
So we do the same motion for nine, okay? Okay, we have a,
Second. You made the motion for nine.
I'm just gonna read it.
Okay.
This time it's a motion for not a recommending approval for Lighthouse BP for the constitutional use permit 3-2025 for the commercial solar conversion. Not make the motion, is that?
I'll make it.
Great. Do we have a second?
Also.
Nate, second, Greg, make a motion. So with that, we'll vote.
Nate?
Could we read the motion again? What is it? It's to-
Not.
Dave? Shannon? Donnie? Tim? Greg?
Yes.
Tom, yes. Gavin?
Yes.
Randy? Yes.
Okay. With that, we'll adjourn at 9:55.
If anybody has questions afterwards, feel free to grab my number. Thank you all for coming.